Okay, we're waiting for Zoom and YouTube to talk to each other. They're going to be talking to each other in just a minute, and we'll be talking to you. Setting up your meeting for YouTube Live. Didn't think it was going to take this long. Usually it's faster, but there we go. Hey there, everybody. I'm Renee Hobbs, and welcome to the Media Education Lab. Today, we have a really great program from our dear friend, Kara Clayton, and her colleagues at Michigan Education Channel. Kara, when I learned that you were doing a creative project that brought together media literacy and STEM, I thought, well, that is a topic that a lot of people are curious about. So take it away, my friend.
Well, thank you. I'm super excited to be here and to introduce my colleague, Matt Hamilton from the Michigan Learning Channel and Detroit PBS. And I'm actually going to toss over to Matt so he can introduce the whole program, and then I'll step back in.
Sounds good. Thanks. Yeah, so I'm Matt Hamilton. I'm actually a former teacher. I taught high school English and social studies for a while before stepping into this role with the Michigan Learning Channel, which is the official title, but I love Michigan Education Channel and all of the ways that we can talk about the work that we do, because most of the time that's what I end up doing, is just talking about the work, because we have this conversation a lot where the words Michigan Learning Channel doesn't maybe really greatly capture everything that we do. I like to talk more about, we're an organization that works really hard to support anybody across the state of Michigan who wants to connect public media and education. And that happens in a variety of different ways, including some of the ways that we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to share some slides to kind of get into that a little bit and talk about what we do in our programs, and then introduce a very specific and special program that Sarah's going to talk to you a little bit more about. So check for me one more time that we can see this, because now I can't see it. Okay, awesome. So Kara, be my eyes in the chat in case stuff comes up and you need to flag me and let me know to talk about something. But this is media literacy and Read, Write, Roar with the Michigan Learning Channel. What we want to do today is introduce you to this idea of, what the Michigan Learning Channel is and how we bring PBS to communities. We want to talk specifically about this content program called Read, Write, Roar, and talk about some of the ways that you might be able to use this in your space, and then make a couple, have some conversations about media literacy and media education in general, as well as some of the other programs and opportunities that we have and that you might have available to you wherever you are in the country. So the Michigan Learning Channel, again, there's lots of different ways for us to talk about it, and we do lots of different things. We're super grateful to be supported by the education funding from the state of Michigan, which means that we have a particular call to support education across our state. But more so than that, we are a statewide partnership. And the partnership comes into play when we think about our major partners here, which I'm trying to highlight if you can see my cursor on the right side of the slide. These are all of the PBS stations across the state of Michigan. So Michigan actually has 6 main stations and then 1 extra station that is technically located in South Bend, Indiana, but services part of Michigan. And all of these stations got together a number of years ago and said, hey, what if we actually work together to support education across our state? And we've been doing that ever since. So some of the ways that we do that together is by working together to produce content, to share content that exists that is produced at the national level. You may or may not be familiar with those 3 letters PBS, but what PBS does is bring together stations across the whole country to make content, share content, and what we call engage content, bringing content to local communities, hosting screenings and events, driving and, engagement campaigns and participation campaigns, getting people excited about the goals of public media, which is always to educate, inform, and inspire. We do this specifically through an education lens, and we have a variety of programs that we do this with. So, for example, one of the programs we're going to talk about today is called Read, Write, Roar. That's our early and upper elementary literacy program, where we have an instructional series supporting reading and writing instruction that actually gets tied to science and social studies standards. We have a partnership with the University of Michigan, and we create and support and engage health and physical education content. We license math content to ensure that students are meeting math standards. One of our partner stations in East Lansing at Michigan State University produces a program called Curious Crew, which is an elementary science program that is amazing and super longstanding and Emmy Award winning. Our partners at Detroit PBS produce a program called Great Lakes Now, which is a science science journalism and environment show about the Great Lakes region. We have a career center program, which is all about career exploration. So there's tons of content that we actually produce across the state. There's also content that we license and we share from the PBS ecosystem that we deliver to educators, and we tend to be available as a resource to support the implementation or engagement of those PBS programs. So what are the lesson plans that exist? How can you make this relevant to your classroom? How can you bring this into your space? We do a lot of library programming. And I'm going to say this at the top and I'm going to say it again at the end. I'm talking about what we do across the state of Michigan. I know there are people on here and listening in from all over the country. And I want to encourage you to find and locate your local PBS station, because there are opportunities for this type of work wherever you are. Locally with your station that's probably nearest to you, but most states also have a statewide network similar to ours, and you can get involved with the work that they're doing at virtually any grade level. There are also PBS resources that I'll share with you in a little bit via pbslearningmedia.org, where you can access lesson plans, materials, content, and professional learning opportunities that come, again, from PBS stations across the country, that come from partner organizations to help you bring content and instructional resources, student production opportunities, media literacy learning, and all kinds of other stuff in your classroom and your learning space. So one of our biggest, most popular programs that we're super proud of is called Read, Write, Roar. And it started out as a kindergarten through third grade reading and writing instructional show that we actually piloted during the pandemic. So it was meant to be a distance learning opportunity. That was a program we broadcast on television all over the state during the first 2 years of the pandemic. We're actually still broadcasting it every day so that kids have an opportunity to learn from home. We formed a partnership with a huge organization here in Michigan to make sure that the content was driven by ELA standards, as well as what we have in the state called the Literacy Essentials, which are research-based practices for meeting those standards. And we created a half-hour program that essentially taught lessons throughout the entire year. So this program has a full year-long academic scope and sequence for kindergarten through third grade. We have since segmented it. What you're looking at here are thumbnails from our YouTube series where we've segmented this program into shorter pieces of content. And that's going to be relevant in just a second when I talk about the new program. So we found that the half-hour show was great for broadcast TV, but what educators really wanted to use in the classroom were these shorter segments. So the first step outside of this was we took the longer program and chopped it up into usable pieces, so that if an educator wanted to just teach one letter sound or practice one of our mystery word activity, those are available. We also produced a preschool series. And then what we're here to talk about today, oops, I clicked on the link instead of clicking to advance the slide, is our Read, Write, Roar upper elementary, which builds on this Read, Write, Roar program and the success and implementation of it, and thinks about what is a more upper elementary level, engaging for older students, segment-driven program. And so we're still producing these half-hour episodes, but from the beginning, we've identified that what we want to produce are these shorter segments that are fun, accessible, engaging. We've got fitness content built in there that teachers can use as sort of brain breaks. We've got this is actually our music series. We've got decoding segments that are about specific types of language and genre. And then we have our core instructional segments that are taught by licensed and certified Michigan teachers that use science and social studies standards to guide the content while they're teaching literacy lessons, like, you know, writing a narrative paragraph about Michigan farming, or writing an informational paragraph about the reemergence of the Detroit River otters last year and stuff like that. So it's very super relevant and current events driven while incorporating those essential standards that students need to learn across the ELA spectrum. One of the, in my opinion, coolest parts of this show is that we're also able to start getting into media literacy, media engagement, how we view media, how we interact with media, and even a little bit of how we create media. And we were super fortunate to be able to connect with a local teacher in Southeast Michigan who is, to date, our only Michigan-based PBS media literacy certified teacher, and was willing to help us create some content for the 4th and 5th grade level to have a series of segments in this show that is really specifically around media literacy. And that's what you all came here to hear about. So I'm gonna leave this intro and introduce Kara to talk about the segments that she produced for the program.
Great, thanks. So I am a media literacy educator, even though I've recently retired from K-12 education. I'm still a media literacy educator, and I decided I would take a risk and apply for this content creation position because I knew I could create content. I just didn't know how I would do in front of the camera, because that's never been my position. I've always been a behind the camera or in front of the class, you know, in front of the classroom kind of thing. And it turned out to be something that I actually really enjoyed doing, at least by the time I got through the 11th or 12th episode. So it took me a little while to get comfortable, but it was really enjoyable. So when Matt and I first talked about this, about like how would I approach this, we kind of talked about, well, why don't we have 2 characters? And so we have this character called Media Literacy Maddie, who is a little bit goofy and quirky, and she wears a costume that changes slightly each time. You'll notice she always wears a white shirt and a white baseball cap with her brand. She's got a little M on her hat, but she has words on her shirt that change each time we change the content of the show. So it might be about logos, or it might be about camera moves, or it might be about reading a newspaper. And so whatever key words or key terminology we're talking about, the words on the shirt change. So that's how her costume changes. And then there's Miss Kara, who's a little more serious, which is really kind of what I am more like in real life. And so I'm the subject area expert, and I'm usually in a classroom setting. So that's kind of a little bit of background on the 2 characters that always show up in these episodes. And then if you can change the slide, please. And so the background, production background, it was kind of a one-man band situation most of the time, although I'm going to give my husband some credit because he did record a couple of scenes for me, and he does get a cameo voiceover in one of the scenes. So I recorded everything myself. I used a video camera that I own, but I could have used a cell phone if I wanted to. I did purchase some equipment, but it was all fairly low-end equipment. So this is something that kind of anybody could do with, you know, probably, and I know this might seem high for some people, but in the realm of video production equipment costs, like for under $1,000, I purchased lights. I purchased a teleprompter to fit on the front of my video camera. I purchased the app, like the subscription to the app. I have a green screen in my basement, and which is really nice, and it lights really easily. And then I have a subscription to an editing app. I use Adobe Premiere. That's my preferred editing program just because I've used it for 15 or 20 years. And so I did all of that work on my own. Yeah, Renee, yeah, I'll have to send you a picture of what it looks like. And then, so I did what was more than a rough cut at home. I did kind of multiple versions. I would send it in for review. I would write the script. I would send that in for multiple revisions. I would record and I would edit, and that had multiple revisions. And then it did get a final edit at PBS. And the final edit was mainly just some audio tweaking and some graphic placement and some music placement that was common for all of the episodes. So this episode that we're going to watch is on camera shots. And so we're going to watch it, but we're not going to watch it from here because we have it downloaded and we think it might play better from another place, we hope. So you can hold on one second. Stand by.
Ooh, this is a cool shot. What if I zoom in? Well, hello, scholars. I'm Media Literacy Maddie, and today I'm using this piece of paper to create a frame to show what I would see through a camera. Video cameras can tell digital stories with the framing the camera operator uses, and that's what we're going to be talking about today on Read, Write, Roar. Let's go find Miss Kara. Hi everyone, I'm Miss Kara. I've been learning about why high-quality soil is necessary to grow fresh fruits and vegetables by watching this video from Destination Michigan. When you watch shows on a screen, it's helpful to understand film language, which is different from language written with words. Film language is told through different camera shots and angles. If you know this language, you'll understand why media creators make certain production decisions about the media they produce. Let's see how this video was created. This is an establishing shot at Willow Run Acres. This shot tells us the location or setting. I have an idea. Let's record some shots of Maddie in the garden. This shot is an establishing shot of Maddie. It sets the scene and tells us she is in her garden. Now it's your turn to practice an establishing shot. Grab some paper and a pencil. Fold your paper in thirds like this. In this column, draw an establishing shot or a shot that sets a scene of a house and some trees. Great job, everyone. This next shot is a medium shot. This is used during an interview. In this medium shot, you can see the top of Mr. Collins' head down to his chest. Do you also notice the writing or title here? This is called a lower third, and it's used to identify who the person is and their relationship to the topic of the video. This is a medium shot of Maddie. Do you notice that it's closer than the establishing shot of the garden setting we saw earlier? We can see a lot more detail. Do you notice there's a lower third to identify who she is and what she's doing? Now take your paper and pencil and draw a medium shot. It's okay if you draw a stick figure like I did. The last shot type is a close-up. This framing is important when you want to show detail of an object or emotion on a person's face. Here's a close-up from the video we've been watching. This is a close-up of Maddie. I wonder what she's found that's so interesting. And now get your paper and pencil one last time. Draw a close-up of a plant growing near the soil. We've learned so much about different camera distances and the use of titles today. Here's one final activity for you to try. Can you identify the film language that matches what is shown in each image? If you guessed close-up, medium shot, establishing shot, and lower third, you are right. Today we learned about several shots used in film language to tell stories: an establishing shot, medium shot, and close-up. We also learned about how a lower third, which is writing on a screen, is used to identify someone in an interview. Film language is spoken with cameras to convey a message. If you ever get a chance to speak film language from behind a camera, what would you say to make your message clear?
Thanks. Okay, so I think so we have all right, so yeah, so before we get into a discussion, there were 11 additional episodes that I worked on, and most of them because science has become this thing that I've learned to love in my adult life. All of them, or most of them, had some kind of science related content in them. So we talked about the shipwrecks in the Great Lakes. We talked about erosion of beaches in the Great Lakes. We talked about, as many of you, I think a few of you know, who are on the call, that butterflies are my favorite things these days. And so I had a chance to exploit my butterfly garden in several of the episodes. So while the episode itself wasn't about butterflies, there were shots in the garden about where Maddie's out in the garden doing something with the butterflies. So there's also like how to identify a credible source. So is it fact or fiction is one of the titles. Clear doesn't always mean healthy. It's a look at the health of the Great Lakes. Diving into the news was about shipwrecks. Milkweed, it's not just a weed. That was clearly about butterflies. Revealing the magic of camera movements was something a little more advanced on working with the camera. If you can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. Then there was a second set of videos that I made that were very specific to a piece, a documentary about the March on Washington, but it was actually the March in Detroit, which was a precursor to the March on Washington. And so we use that as a mentor text. So we analyzed that film and looked at why did they make that film? So analyzing purpose, what's the mood of the film? And it was a look at lighting, how lighting can affect tone. An analysis of film imagery titled I Like What I See Here. Where are we at and why is it important was an analysis of setting. Who or what is making that sound? How does, how does sound make the story more engaging? Did we ever find out what they were thinking? How do differing points of view contribute to the storyline? So that was kind of a deeper dive into some media literacy concepts. Okay, so now that you've watched an episode, I guess a discussion question I have, and I think there are 12 in the room, and I can't see everybody because I'm not able to see everybody, but I think there's 12 in the room, and I'm wondering if we can just do it as one large group. Renee, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's great. That's fine.
Okay, so it's a discussion, and we can either do it in the chat or people can raise their hands. And so the question is, what do you look for when choosing a video for your learning space? And maybe we can get rid of the slides for a moment, stop sharing, and see other people and hear what they have to say. What do you look for or consider when choosing a video for your learning space?
So, so for my learning space, I'm working with college and university students. I like to make sure that that I present an array of different points of view and different kinds of authors, from more corporate institutional authors to more to bloggers and more individual authors, to authors who have a very unique point of view. So presenting a range of different points of view is something I consider when choosing a video for my learning space.
Thanks, Renee. How about some others?
Maddie, turn your microphone on. Oh, hold on here. Ask to unmute. There we go.
Oh,
Yeah, now
okay,
you're back.
okay. My whole background's been K through 12 when I was in New York and everything. And I can tell you, depending on the students involved, if it's special ed, if it's gifted, if it's regular ed, you have to look at it that way. You know, who the student is, what's going on with that. And I can tell you with media literacy, especially in New York, we had to look back at the videos. A lot of times in special ed, it was animated. A lot of times it wasn't. A lot of times we showed students that made videos. That worked better. Because if the student like, oh, I made this video. What did I do right? What did I do wrong? How can I make it better? And then the kids jumped in and they wanted to redo the production. So that's how we did it. And it worked. And then a lot of that stuff, not with me, but my husband's school was Board of Ed Television. So those kids produced those shows. But that's what the problem is here. Who's our audience?
Mm-hmm.
And how do we make it palatable for them?
Kara, I noticed that you used a lot of interactivity in your video. You modeled a activity that involved a drawing, and then you did another kind of synthesis activity. Could you identify the things? Can you talk about the rationale behind that? Was obviously a production strategy. What was your thinking behind why you wanted to build that interactivity into the episode, into the segment?
Thanks. So obviously I couldn't take a kid out to go do video recording, right? So I wanted to try to bring in as much activity as I could to keep, it's a 4-minute video. And I wanted to keep interest as high as possible. And so so there was a couple of goals. Okay, sorry. I'm in the dark. There are a couple of goals. One was I wanted to chunk things, and that was an expectation as we were all making our videos, is to kind of make sure things were chunked. Second, we wanted to make sure there was engagement. There was some kind of an activity for the kids to do as they were watching, but something that they could do that was simple. And so the idea was nothing with technology, like this is something they can do at home. So hopefully there's a paper and a pencil or a crayon or something very, very simple that they can just quickly grab and do. So that the idea of just drawing or just writing is the level of the activity. So that was that. And then trying to have some kind of fun little game at the end was what we did. I didn't do that with every video, but that was something that, you know, to kind of test knowledge or assess knowledge at the end. That was also something I didn't plan on doing that, but it was suggested that I do that. And then we kind of played with that concept for several of the videos. So we designed the script and kind of made a formula. So the scripts kind of became formulaic in that we repeated that same structure throughout.
Because one of the things I was thinking about is for a teacher who might be a little bit overwhelmed with how to incorporate media production into a fourth grade classroom, in a way, you're modeling for the teacher little parts of the various parts of the production process. And I was thinking about how, you know, that would be something you could actually measure to see. Teachers might gain confidence
Sure.
by watching this segment and going, it's not so hard, right?
Right.
So
Right. Yeah. And being provided with a structure for a script, like, and I kind of, you know me, Renee, I always stretch the rules a little bit. So it was being provided with, you know, an overall structure that I then played with, made it very helpful, and script writing lends itself to that. So here's a script structure, kind of stick with the script, shoot little segments. And the goal was, you know, I was told over and over again, keep it as simple as you can. And I was like, oh, but simple is boring. And so I did some change, and Matt's smiling, but I made some changes so that, I didn't want to do just sitting in a classroom and talking to a camera. I did some things that, I went outside and I was over by a lake, and, there are issues with that. It makes it really difficult to shoot by a lake because there's boats that are going by and there are people having a picnic, and, it can be hard. But yeah, there are ways for fourth graders or fifth graders to do video. And it can be overwhelming, but if you provide structure and scaffolds, it's definitely doable.
which one of those topics was the hardest one from your point of view to develop as a creative concept?
Probably just the first one. I'm just getting started was the hardest. From a creative, probably the one I had to do where I had to do it over again. There was one where, like, I'm in my office right now. There was one that I had to completely reshoot because I thought, oh, I'm going to shoot it in my office and it's going to be great. And it just wasn't, because for a variety of reasons, there were just so many things that went wrong. And I should have done it the way I should have done it recording in my studio setting in my basement. And I chose not to for whatever reason. I can't even remember why now, but it was just that was the hardest. From a production perspective, that was the hardest, because I shot it like 3 times and I was like, I've spent so much time on this 4-minute video. I was ready to pull my hair out, but you live and learn. So follow the structure.
Now, do these video lessons have a lesson plan or other content that is on the website? And if so, could you show us what that looks like and how you develop that?
Matt, that was the question for you. There are some handouts that I can only speak briefly to that. Matt can probably tell you more.
Well, so the media literacy segments currently don't have handouts, right?
Right, but when the whole episode went out, there was one handout that was kind of like a scavenger hunt type thing.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. That is actually not. Let me I can show everybody. I was not prepared with this, so
No worries,
I will narrate as I go there.
Oh,
But
we should go there. Okay.
yeah, so the lessons, so the 4th and 5th grade program, like I said, is really segment driven. And so these media literacy, short segments are a piece of a full show. And I want to make sure, yeah. So I can share this with you. This is going to be like the whole show page on our website. So if you go to the Read Write Roar Upper Elementary program, you can see this, lessons in Michigan history is one of our core, what we would call like a core literacy lesson. So those are 6-minute videos. Each full 30-minute episode has 2 of these. So I think this episode has this one, and then this one, Why Michigan's Capital Moved from Detroit to Lansing. We have either a social studies or science standards driven lesson in each episode. And those include the, ELA teaching material and the handouts.
Got it.
And then they also include a variety of, we sort of like mix and match. We've got these really amazing, Audra is another educator that works with us, who's a music educator who, I love these. These are so amazing, and I would totally use them in my classroom, but she like teaches everybody how to make all these soundscapes for different settings across the state, with hands and bodies and sounds. We've got like these shorter kind of, still literacy, but sort of mini lesson segments. We've got some naturalist educators from Northern Michigan who are creating content again outside, like Kara was describing. The media literacy pieces. Mr. Cass is a poetry teacher. These are the fitness. So they all come together. Some of them have handouts and like activity guides that, like for this one, for example, this is writing a first-person narrative. This comes with a printable that you could actually teach students how to write a first-person narrative, and they would write it out. The rest of the content, so like the media literacy stuff, doesn't currently have, a printout and use in the classroom piece, just because of the way the budget mapped out. But that is sort of in the goals of what we would develop in an ongoing way. And these are continuing to be populated. So the other thing is that this is currently the only one of these that's available, but as Kara just showed us, there's a bunch more coming. And so we'll have a full collection, a 4th or 5th grade teacher who wants to teach sort of a media literacy unit, then, in the next few months, we'll have access to all of those videos in sort of a playlist that they could kind
Wow.
of plan around that. So
Cool. Thank you so much. I see Tracy has Tracy had her hand up. Tracy, I invite you to ask. These are 2 great questions. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for talking us through them.
Thanks. And I know, Matt, you kind of answered the one, because my second one was just like, have teachers use this? Have you received feedback? Because I know, and I work at the post-secondary level as well. So I do a lot of media literacy, just like with pre-service teachers, and kind of helping to prepare them for kind of what to expect, and at least helping to make them a little bit more media literacy savvy. But I know, the teachers in the pre-K-12 environment, like time standards, so I love the idea of these short, like 4 or 5 minute segments, and with a lesson plan that might also be short, that teachers could use, at the end of the day, when they have time, or at the beginning of the day during the morning meeting. So, something that's not overwhelming. Yeah. So my question was like, did you start using them with teachers, or is that your intention?
yeah, so the K3 series that we created again was actually meant for at-home learning. And then the feedback we started getting was actually that teachers wanted to use them in the classroom, and they were finding benefit, and that they needed them to be shorter. We also got a lot of feedback that because of the way they had been developed, we developed them in partnership with an education leadership organization in the state who had created this set of standards around essentially like how to teach reading and writing effectively. So we're all educators here. There's the content area standards, which tell you what to teach, which may or may not be research-based, and we don't know who kind of landed on them. And then there's like best practice, right? And how we teach and how we know based on like research around how kids learn. And so that guides a lot of it. And so we found not only is it really great content for a kid to watch and learn from, it's also really great modeling. Someone earlier also mentioned like it is great modeling content for pre-service teachers or practicing teachers. We've had administrators say, actually, this is a really great evaluation tool because we can sort of level set, you know, what is expected in the classroom and what kinds of practices we're embracing as a building. So yeah, we've had a lot of teachers use it. We've had literacy coaches use it a lot to kind of share, again, best practices within their coaching cycles. And then going into the 4th and 5th grade level, then we also, so we worked with content area experts, we worked with those instructional coaches, we worked with a body of research that helped us kind of figure out like what's gonna do all that at this level, because you know 5th graders interact with media and interact with school much differently than say 1st or 2nd graders. And so how are we going to grab their attention? We landed on this sort of like comic book ish theme for the whole episode. We use this kind of sticker aesthetic because that's super popular at the upper elementary level. It's fast. We did shorter segments because we wanted to really grab attention. There's a lot of fast movement, there's jokes, there's humor, there's multiple characters, and all that is driven by what we know about kids as well as what teachers have kind of shared. You know, this is what works in our classrooms. This is what, like you shared, we have time maybe in the morning for like a quick video, and then we got to get right into our reading workshop or whatever the district has sort of mandated. And so, yeah, that was a lot of the design for sure.
Cool. Thanks for sharing. Next up is Sean. Sean.
Hi, everybody. This is a great conversation. So my students are a little bit older. I work with undergraduates as a mentor for a mentorship opportunity, introducing them to science journalism. And I think what I'm seeing here, what I like, is you have a library of a lot of different resources, because what I like to do with my students is get them to, for example, in the first week, I've never done this with video, but you know, I just have them sort of explore the internet, just the prompt to say, find a piece of science journalism that interests you. And what I think is compelling about that is I can see what they're interested in, but I can also get more insight into their habits and sort of exploring the internet and finding credible sources or not finding credible sources. And we can sort of have that discussion and reflection around those things and sort of refine our processes. My question to you is, in the lesson plans, I know this is a younger age group, but do you find it a challenge, or do you have sort of not really a struggle, but do you think about how much should be modeled versus how much the students should be sort of finding things on their own? And what do those discussions look like if you do?
I could like gesture at that. Do you want to try to answer that, Kara, or do you want me to take it?
Why don't you start? Because I'm not sure I understand the question.
I mean, we have a lot of conversations as we're thinking about content and the kinds of content we make and we use in the classroom. That sort of, I mean, to sort of distill, I feel like what I'm hearing you ask, and let me know if I'm incorrect, is that sort of the difference between what I would consider like more of a direct instructional model and more of an inquiry-based or sort of student-led learning model. And yeah, as we work with educational experts and consultants and educational research, there is a lot of that balance of like, especially in the literacy realm, as young people are learning how to interpret language and how to compose and communicate, there's a lot of direct instruction and repetition that is necessary. And there's a lot of, you know, scientific and research basis for how we instruct. What we found in moving into the upper elementary level is that now we've got students who have, you know, ideally some command of language and some interest in developing written ideas and composing thoughts and being creative. And so it is this level where we utilized, and actually I love that you mentioned science journalism, because this drove a lot of the program here. Is the NGSS standards at this level is a lot of like, explore the world around you, think about, you know, how the world has been created, what is our role in the environment as humans, what is an ecosystem, those kinds of questions. And there's a lot of opportunity to investigate and learn and conceive of new ideas. And along the way, yeah, there's a lot of opportunity for kids to kind of feel inspired by reading and writing. Kara and I just had this conversation because we also run a media production cohort, a professional learning opportunity for educators. And last year we ran the first pilot, and it was for middle school and high school educators. And she said, hey, can we include 5th grade teachers this time? Because there is totally an interest there to like figure out how to tell stories and come into, you know, a sort of self-directed education model. So that's what I'll say.
Other comments, questions? The floor is open.
I have a comment and a question for both of you, and it's not to be taken as a joke. This needs to be national. This needs to be across PBS, like ASAP. And New York is not that difficult. Like I said, I'm not active now, but I still have my hands out there. But I'd like to see this in every school. And I think the funding is probably there. I congratulate both of you. I wish I had some of this when I was creating it 30 years ago, but it needs to be out there. And if you need help with that, sign me up. You got it. Because it needs to be in every school. It really does.
That's a really intriguing idea, and we could certainly debate that. In a way, for me, part of the charm is this is building this is building alliances across the state of Michigan, rooted in the sort of power of those 6 core PBS stations, and that's building relationships locally, right? My guess is that teachers find out about this through the education coordinators at the local stations. Is that right? So that basically it's it's close at handness. Its proximity to a local partner is actually kind of the appeal, but I don't really know if that's the way you're marketing or that's the way the education coordinators. Does each of the PBS stations have an education coordinator, or really has that been centralized through Michigan Learning?
So in the state of Michigan, yeah, the Michigan Learning Channel is fairly unique in the way we work together. Each station has a local engagement team member, a coordinator, and then we have this kind of statewide partnership, alliance, whatever you want to call it. But really, that's indicative of exactly what you're describing. That is what happens nationally. You know, there are, and I was going to start kind of dropping some links into the chat, but you know, reach out if you're interested in what this looks like, either nationally or locally. I think the way you're describing it is exactly on point. You know, the PBS model is, yes, there are national resources. We share them all. There's stuff that applies to all of us, and there's always local connections and local implementation. So many stations have opportunities to get involved at the local level, while there's also national opportunities. So PBS sponsors a national youth media challenge, which is how Kara and I initially got connected. That also comes out of a local station in San Francisco, which runs a regional youth media takeover where students in the local area also get airtime on TV and radio. PBS operates PBS NewsHour Student Reporting Labs, which is a national project. Teachers can connect with them and bring journalism into their classrooms. There are also local versions in Southeast Michigan here. Our Student Reporting Labs teachers can send content directly to Detroit PBS. And actually this week on Thursday, we're airing one of those student created pieces about investigations across, you know, the direction that DEI has taken in organizations over the last couple of years.
Cool. So Maddie and I are both right. It's local and national, or it's the interplay between local and national is the unique selling proposition. Cool.
Yep.
All right. Last question to both of you. what advice, what did you learn from this adventure, and what advice do you have to the creative folks who are watching this episode, kind of imagining how they might contribute short segments that have the opportunity to introduce media literacy to diverse audiences? So what advice do you have for future creatives who might be inspired by your work?
Sorry, I was muted. You want me to start? I would say, as I've been saying for several years now, media production is very doable now. Being creative in a digital space is very doable now. So if you don't want to do video and you want to do something else, it's pretty doable. And I would say find your resource, whether it's a person or it's a app or whatever, and read about it or ping someone and get some information and try it. Like you can't lose. So try it and make a mistake and try it again and fix it. That's kind of my mantra. And kids love creating. Kids like to take ownership of things that they do create. And I think that, and adults sort of like to create too. I mean, I love it. I love to edit. So that was one of the reasons I wanted to do this, because I love editing. And I think it's worth trying. I think it's just worth trying. Why not? I guess that's my answer. Why not? Why not do it?
I was gonna say the exact same thing, so I won't say it again, but absolutely, pick it up, give it a shot. I think the key in your question, Renee, is that like if you're a creative person, you're already 90% of the way there. So you're open to trying, you've got ideas. Kara's right, the technology's out there, it's super accessible. So just try it, practice it, and you'll get there.
And I would say one piece of advice that you've both demonstrated to us today is the power of two, right? This is a good partnership. It developed from a relationship that then you continued to embellish and discover possibilities. And that kind of creativity is so powerful. So thank you, Matt. Thank you, Kara, for joining us. We're really proud to see this addition to media literacy in the PBS system, and can't wait to see when all the episodes are available. We might want to have you back, right? So just saying. Thanks for joining us today, everybody. I'm Renee Hobbs at the Media Education Lab. Check out what's coming up down the road. We've got a bunch of great sessions happening later this week on empathy and all kinds of other topics. So thanks for being part of it today. Bye, Matt. Bye, Kara.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.